welcome to today's Planning Commission meeting. We'll get started with our public hearings shortly. Before we do that, we have a little bit of business to handle. First, we need an approval of the minutes from our September 28, 2023 meeting.
So moved.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any discussion on those? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Want to do the planning director's report? Or shall we jump right into the?
I think in the interest of time, you have a pretty full agenda. We'll just jump straight to the item of the, did you do the schedule?
Nope.
Nope, okay. Yeah, let's do the adoption of the schedule for 2024 and then move into the update on our community master plan.
I'll move approval of the 2024 schedule.
Support. Okay, any discussion on the schedule? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Do you want to do the update and then conflict of interest, or shall we handle that first?
I think doing the update first is fine.
Okay.
All right, so today we have our consulting team planning next here to provide you with an update of our round 2 of our engagement phase for the community master plan update. You will recall that at the end of each round of engagement, the contract had them coming before both you as well as the city commission to provide you with an update of where we're at so that we can make sure that we stay on track in terms of process and that the planning commission feels comfortable with the next steps. So part of this presentation also provides you with the dates of the next round of engagement and what we're anticipating for that. City Commission heard this similar presentation on Tuesday afternoon, albeit we typically give them an abbreviated version for what you are about to see. And so I'll introduce Sarah Bongiorno of Planning next. And certainly if there's any questions following the presentation, both Sarah's team as well as my team are here to assist.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. It's good to be back with you. I was here in April giving you an update on our first round, so we're happy to be back here and share a little bit about our second round of engagement and what we learned and who we engaged with. And at the very end of this, I'll give you a preview of what we're planning for the third round of engagement, which is coming up real quick here in November. So you all know this, but for the benefit of anyone in the audience or is watching, the Community Master Plan is a 20-year planning horizon document. It's focused on the physical development of the community. It addresses topics such as what's happening with your population, economy, housing needs, transportation. It integrates solid technical analysis. We're working with a larger team bringing that technical planning work to the project along with robust public input, right? So we've been really interested in hearing from your community about what their needs are and what they would like to see out of this master plan. And we also know it's the underpinning for a valid zoning ordinance. So we just are moving from sort of this phase 3, but it's round 2 of our engagement into our second or third round of engagement here. So we've been analyzing and defining and kind of redefining based upon community input, the focuses for the plan. And we're going to be testing some of that into our third round here in November. And then we are planning another round in the spring as part of the adoption process. So just to remind you, our engagement, again, it has 4 rounds of equitable, inclusive, productive, and what we're hoping fun engagement for the community. I think it's important to note that we're at a pivot point in the engagement where we've been more generative, brainstorming, asking people their big ideas, asking, more open-ended questions to them, being more responsive now. So we've taken their input and we're starting to frame up plan frameworks and specific objectives, and we'll get to recommendations that we want their feedback on. So we're kind of changing in our engagement approach to be more responsive and providing feedback and direction. We're clear that this is a self-selected and qualitative data, but we have been very diligent in collecting demographic information from the folks that have engaged with us and participated so that we have reflective and representative input that represents the larger community. And we've also been focused on the topics that are within the Community Master Plan purview, again, physical development, land use. We have put together this plan framework, was what we're calling it, which sets a community vision statement at the uppermost level, expression of a community's future. We then have community value threads that reflect at a high level what the community cares about most. And then we have goal areas, which are desired outcomes expressed in simple terms, which are those community goals are beginning to be the chapters of the organization of the plan. I want to call attention, though, to the values, because we've heard a lot. Those are very important to the community. Those came out of an organic input from the first round. And so they are going to be treated as cross-cutting themes throughout the plan. And so while we'll have, recommendations organized into these chapters, they're going to be cross-referenced, and we'll be thinking about how equity, safety, sustainability, culture, vibrancy are represented and moving the city forward across our recommendations. So we know that those are really important to the community, so we're going to make sure that our recommendations are hitting on all of those. Our vision statement, I'm going to get into how these tested here in a minute. They all tested well, but some of the comments we heard back from the vision statement from the public was trying to find a way to include sustainability, or the idea of environmental stewardship into the statement more strongly, because it's really not mentioned, even though we know that's a really important value thread. So we had a work session with the steering committee yesterday. We're still looking through their feedback, and so that vision statement is going to be continued to be massaged a bit as we move forward. Participation overview, we're really happy. We engaged over 1,800 people. This is as of October 2nd. Even just this past week, we've received some late input that came in, so we will be catching that up. Numbers will change a little bit, but majority of the input's in, over 2,300 pieces of input collected. We conducted engagement in a variety of forms this round. We had an in-person workshop, which kicked off our round back in May. We also had a presence at the Neighborhood Summit event. Our community connectors were out in the community meeting in small groups with community members and doing what we call move and talks, which were workshops that were conducted out in a neighborhood, moving about, looking at, telling stories and looking at, what's on the ground in this neighborhood today and what they would like to see in the future. They also conducted some one-on-one interviews with folks out in the community. City staff did a great job going out and engaging youth through the different city youth camp opportunities. We had an online survey, and then a number of our neighborhood organizations conducted pop-ups at different festivals and things that were going on and events this summer. We did hear from people living in all 3 wards and majority of neighborhoods. So if you remember from round 1, we had a gap in some of our demographics, which I'm happy to report that we closed this gap in the Black and African American community, which was really important to us. So I know that our community connectors and our steering committee were focusing on that. That was a goal, and so we're happy to report that that gap has been closed. We also continue to engage the Hispanic and Latinx community. So again, really important that these demographics are matching our percentages for our participants are matching the overall census data from the community. There were still some gaps in age, though. We closed the gap considerably here with the under 18, with all the effort focused on the youth camp. So that's looking pretty good. This elusive 18 to 24-year-olds, though, they're very hard to reach in all communities we work in, and we've been really trying, and we've made some good connections with GRCC and GVSU, so we're going to continue to work on that. We've got some more intentional strategies that we'll continue to work to apply that going forward, but the rest of this looks good. Same with education. We had a gap in the round 1 of this folks with a high school diploma or equivalent here. We've closed this gap considerably, though. We're not there, but we were at 4% in round 1. Now we're at 13%. So we're moving in the right direction, and we're going to continue to be mindful of this with our community connectors and our steering committee to make sure that we're promoting and outreaching and communicating with folks in these different demographics. The neighborhoods, this was kind of like the Creston neighborhood was most engaged this round. You can kind of see we had several neighborhoods here that didn't have representation, but we're still sorting this out because we had several people, when they responded to our demographic survey, put a street or an intersection, not a specific neighborhood. So we're trying to work with staff to see how many of those we can actually geocode and get this a little tighter. So we're working on that. The vision, values, and goals, they all ranked very well, in our opinion. They averaged about 4.3 out of 5, which in our, in our opinion is a very strong rating. So these resonated with people. I'm going to unpack each of these a little bit. Again, this one's going to change slightly our vision, but it ranked an average 4.3 out of 5. We are working with the steering committee, like I said, to center sustainability a little more strongly in this statement. Our value threads, you can see the breakdown here, but again, they all came out, pretty close, and good support from the community. Again, our goals, which are shaping up to be our plan chapters, again, ranked very well. The desirable development character one ranked a little lower than the others, and I think in reading some of the comments, I think people don't understand as closely what that means. And so I think there's some education. I think once they see what's contained in that goal area, I think it'll make a little more sense, but I think that was why that one was a little bit lower. So I'm gonna go through a series of slides here, and it's gonna seem a little redundant because we're hearing, I think we're starting to see what's really important to people. We're hearing some similar themes. We're asking questions in different ways, in different formats, but these first 3 slides were from our workshop we did back in May. And so we had engagement sessions on climate change mitigation adaptation, environmental justice and health, and the 15-minute community idea. And so I'm gonna hit on these. I'm not gonna read all these bullets because I know you have the packet there, but you'll start to see some very centralized threads going through that we're going to be paying very close attention to. But people were interested in obviously energy initiatives, solar for residential, and really trying to center being more energy efficient. For transportation, we've heard a lot about making the city car optional, right? Having choices for transportation, and being able to put some of those other infrastructures like complete streets, paths, and trails, and pedestrian-only areas potentially. We heard a lot about green space and wanting more amenities or more kind of recreational opportunities within parks, and then also this equitable access to parks. Really looking across the city and making sure that they are distributed evenly. So those were some of the themes we heard from that one. For environmental justice and health, again, just the air pollution, we heard that in a couple other of the questions as well from the highways, improving the quality of the tree canopy, really looking on those de-invested communities and trying to again, an equitable approach to what we're doing. Transportation, again, an equitable lens on that, making sure that all neighborhoods have access to the bus network and protected bike lanes, and a lot of conversation around accessibility, right? Making sure that all people in the Grand Rapids can access parks and different parts of the community, no matter their ability. We did what we call a 15-minute community exercise. So we had a sort of a circle of an area, and we asked folks to sort of look at that area and like, how can we create a 15-minute community, which is really about getting to all your basic needs within a 15-minute walk or bike ride. And so some of the things that came out of those group discussions, they were pretty fun. People were around a map and they were drawing and labeling, and we had a key that they could say, we want more of this, we want more of this. And so they got to kind of design their own 15-minute community, but you'll see some similar threads here, a lot about different types of houses, like incentives for ADU, senior living, live work, things like that. A lot of talk about more accessibility of the river and green space. You'll see the community solar there as well. More kind of focus on pedestrians. This idea of community-owned or more local access to food, and this more mixed use along major corridors. They worked with a set of different strategies that they could apply to their 15-minute community. So, and then of course, building sidewalks everywhere, having people be able to access by foot the city. So those were some of the highlights that came out of that activity. We had on the website and kind of a quick engagement survey that a lot of our neighborhood organizations were able to distribute for us, which was called the Magic Wand. And so we asked folks, like, if you could wave a magic wand, what was one thing you could change with the city? And so these were some of those ideas. Again, you'll see similar threads about housing, public transportation, homelessness, allocating more resources and support for the unhoused, improvement of infrastructure, and engaging youth and kind of more youth programming. So again, some of these things are maybe outside of the CMP process, but we're gathering what's on people's minds, and we will be, allocating it appropriately into the other city departments. As part of the move-in talks that our community connectors did, they did a walk audit. So whatever route they were planning to walk with people, which these were about, 45 minutes to an hour walking around a community. We asked them to look at what's kind of on the ground there. And these were some things that they pulled out. They talked about things relative to housing, food access, the green space access, parks and rec, mobility, and again, accessibility was in there. So, we've got very detailed information, and we're in the process of collecting up all of those routes so that we can show on a map all the places that people walked and then tag these a little more specifically. We had to roll this up pretty high level for you all today, but we're still working on a little bit more analysis of this work. We also asked them at the very end, after they had done the audit, was to envision, again, the vision of the future. What's here today? What are some of the maybe the issues or things that you uncovered in your audit? Then how does that transfer into thinking about the future of this particular neighborhood or corridor? And so again, you'll see similar themes here about affordable housing and housing types, pollution and environmental aspects, and then the health equity pieces as well, about having access to healthy food and recreational opportunities and such. So. And then the move-in talks, sorry, this is a little out of order from how they did them, but the move-in talks kind of kicked off with storytelling. And so the community connectors invited local storytellers, local folks to serve as storytellers into these move-in talks. And so we collected over 6 hours of audio that we've been reading and or listening to, transcribing and listening to. But, some of the key things we heard from these stories was a lot of people talking about Grand Rapids history, including the history of redlining and the impact of different things that shape the physical and political forms of the city. Again, we heard a lot about just the prioritization of people over cars and pedestrians and bicycles, and then commentaries on affordability and houses and housing and diversity as well, or some of the high-level ideas that people shared out of that. So I'm gonna pause there, I guess, before I move on. I don't know if there's any questions on the round two. I know that's a lot, but I think when you look across all the different activities we do, we're starting to see some really strong themes that we're going to be working with as we start to write recommendations with the staff. Okay. All right. So I want to preview for you our round three, which is coming up quickly here in about a month, November 14th, 15th, and 16th. We're going back to kind of, if you remember back at the launch parties in February, we had a sort of a three-series approach to that as well. One in each ward, although they're not ward specific, so anyone can go to anyone that's most convenient for them. We just try to place them geographically around the community. So we'll be at GRPS University on the 14th, Center for Community Transformation in their event space on the 15th, and we'll be at the MTech Center on the 16th. All of these run from 5 to 7. They're all going to feature the same input gathering activities. So no matter which one people come to, they'll be able to give their input on a variety of input stations focused on each kind of goal area of the plan. But we are planning a sort of special event, if you will, to kick off each of these. So we do have secured for Wednesday, November 15th, we're going to host a community-led panel discussion that our community connectors are helping to organize at the Center for Community Transformation. On Thursday, November 16th, we've secured Shane Phillips to come in and be a guest speaker to talk about housing. And we're trying to line up another performance art kind of piece for the 14th. That's still kind of coming down the pipelines, but we'll put more information up on the website about those events. So we're planning that in November, and then our community connectors and neighborhood organizations will be hosting what we're calling community conversations. Again, they are boots on the ground, kind of out in the community, going and making sure those voices that may not come out to our larger events are heard. And so there's a process with them to develop some critical questions that they'll be meeting with folks out in the community and talking with folks. We're still continuing to analyze and understand all the inputs. A lot of input is good input from round two, so that we can start to write the recommendations for the plans. I don't know if we have any here today, but the planning department has printed rat cards here, so anything you can do to help us spread the word that, we have another opportunity for folks to give their input. We have printed and digital materials that we can distribute. And that's it. I think that was all. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you for the update. Commissioners, any questions?
No questions, but I guess maybe it's more of a request from you to just send us the digital versions of these so we can put them out through our networks?
Yep, we can definitely send the digital versions, and we have rack cards that are coming that will be available for you to take a pile later this afternoon when you're done.
Thank you.
So do you feel like you are still on track schedule-wise for an early 2024 adoption?
Good question. We talked about that yesterday, and one of the things, we got some great, we talked through that with staff, with Kristen and her team. And so what our next task is to really map out from here through, I think our target was a June sort of adoption. So we're going to work backwards, putting in all the necessary requirements and meetings with you and City Commission. And so I'll know more about that, but that's our goal right now, is to try to meet that June deadline. But it'll keep us on a good clip. But we're trying to map that out right now, so we can give you more information about that.
Yeah, so the only thing that I think is going to cause a little bit of angst is that the state law requires us to have the plan released for public input and sit for 63 days, which is a lot of time. I don't know, maybe it's 62, but yeah.
It's around, it's 62
I
or 63.
think it's intended to be, 2 months.
2 months.
Where it is distributed intentionally to utility companies, adjacent jurisdictions, the Regional Planning Commission, and provide adequate time for those entities to review and provide feedback.
Yeah.
So that is a little bit challenging when you start counting how many months and weeks we have until
Yeah.
June.
Right.
To add that 60 to 63-day window is a little bit problematic. But we're still on track to be finishing the plan on or around that date. One other element that is going to be informing the schedule, which I'd like you to maybe provide some feedback on, if not today, soon, is how do you think it's going to be best for you to digest this? Do you want the plan, I don't know if we could go back to that framework, Sarah.
Yep.
Slide. Do you want a draft of the plan when it's drafted in its entirety, or would you want it to receive it chapter by chapter? I'm not sure it would be necessary for us to do a meeting dedicated to each goal or each chapter to review, but we could also do that. So that's going to be helpful for us to understand how you want to receive the plan and provide feedback before you consider it formally for that public release process.
I think it depends on how it's drafted. If you're drafting a chapter at a time, then yes, I think let us review them one at a time. It's going to be easier to digest and interpret. It'll give us more time. But if it's something that you're not comfortable sharing a draft chapter with until you have all of the chapters, then I guess we wait, and then I'd hate to stagger the release of that to us for review, like give it to us when it's ready, I suppose.
I think that should be fine. I mean, the framework will be probably a little bit more fleshed out than this, so you'll understand its relationship to the other chapters.
Yeah, I guess the one thing, the one thing that will be a little bit harder to appreciate are those value threads. I think if we do it a chapter by chapter, I think there should still be a review where you're looking at the whole thing and you're looking at those value threads. That's one of the ways we're going to work with the steering committee to make sure equity, safety, all the things that we've talked about centering really clearly in the plan are really there and are truly serving as those cross-cutting themes. So I think that digestible, like being able to digest it a chapter at a time makes sense, but I think there does need to be a point where you do look back and you probably do it as a review of those values specifically, because you've looked at all the specific recommendations kind of in its, entirety for that chapter, but then looking at it cross-cutting, I think is going to be important.
funny but not very funny question. Is there a way we can get it in video format? Like just do a YouTube video and make it a minute?
Yeah, we talked
3
about
minutes?
that. No, we talked about that. That's a great idea. Not a funny question at all. We talked about how best to release this to the public as well. We have a fourth round of engagement that will happen before the official 63-day period. And it's a lot. It's a lot for the community to digest. So we've talked about how we might be able to think about a less than 3-minute or 2-minute video that really highlights like this is what is happening in the Great Neighborhoods chapter. Here's what you need to kind of understand. So yeah, we've talked about that. So we should noodle on that a little bit more because I think that would be really helpful.
Call me if you need my help.
Are you willing to put
Yeah, I was
together
gonna
an audiobook? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm really good at that, actually. I like those.
Well, I was thinking you might be.
Yeah.
Jim Davis also has a good voice.
Good voice for that.
You
Yeah.
guys can sing it.
There you go.
Yeah. No, that's great. I appreciate that.
Will there be, I'm looking at the value threads and wondering, like chapter by chapter, it may not be always so clear in a specific topic heading how maybe culture plays into that. Like,
Yeah.
is there anything we can get that, I don't know what it would be, either the, Cliff Notes or a appendix, something that would say, hey, and as we approach this topic, this is how we thought about these values through it, even if it's not like directly right out in front of your face?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea because one particular recommendation might actually be helping to move forward a couple values or upholding a couple values, right? It's not just these are one for one. So in my head, and we have been talking to staff about an online plan, like a web, more not static as in the printed version, but something that's a little more dynamic. If that's the way we move forward, then you can read the plan like in the chapters, right? Or you can filter or sort by the values, which I think would be a great way to be able to review the plan for anybody, but for the public as well, because they can say, okay, well, I'm really interested in what the city's doing in this plan relative to equity. Equity, sort for me, and then no matter what, chapter they're in, all the equity recommendations that kind of help support that show up. So I think in that plan, we can do in more of a static plan, I think with icons, cross-referencing it, but then doing some sort of, maybe what you're asking for is some sort of summary piece that's at the beginning or the end that maybe makes that a little bit like in a snapshot, what's happening in that chapter relative to some of the values. So we can think about that, definitely to make that a little more user-friendly. It's a good idea.
My experience with our reviewing ASPs in the past is that it's made it for our review too late
Okay.
to really have much input. So
yeah.
I would err on the side of earlier.
Sooner than later. Okay, that's good. Okay.
All right.
All right.
So we will provide those rack cards to all of you. And as I stated earlier, with Shane Phillips being in town, I do plan to put together some additional opportunities with the Planning Commission to utilize that opportunity of having him here during the day. And perhaps there's some additional roundtable discussions that we can have. So we'll push out that. But if you could maybe tentatively look at your calendars ahead of time for those evenings, but also for the afternoon or the day of the 16th, and maybe just hold on your calendar to the extent possible, and we'll flesh that out in greater detail. The next time, Sarah, you're here for a report out is when?
Good question. We need to think about that, I guess. We try to look, and I guess you just got your 2024 schedule, it sounds like, so that's helpful to us. But we try to find the week when City Commission, Planning Commission kind of line up.
Yep.
So we'll need to look at that, but we will be back with you to give you an update after round 3 here.
Yep, so probably early next year.
Yeah. Yep.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Do you want me to pull this PowerPoint down, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
please.
All right, thank you for that update. Timing worked out perfectly, too. We're about to get started with our public hearings, but before we do that, quickly go through potential conflicts of interest for today's meetings. Anything from other commissioners? I'll just mention 949 Cherry Street Southeast is next door to a business that I own. Looking through the bylaws, even though I don't have a direct financial interest, the bylaws do say if you're adjacent to a subject property, which it is an immediate adjacency. So I'll leave that up to commissioners to determine if I have a conflict or not.
I can read that section for the Planning Commission. So it says, issue, deliberating on, voting on, or reviewing a case concerning work on land owned by him or her, or which is adjacent to land owned by him or her. And that the conflict of interest may include, but is not limited to, and it lists, and that one seemed to be the most potentially relevant. So we felt like it was appropriate to put forward before the Planning Commission for consideration.
Do I make the motion or do I just bring it up for discussion?
You make the motion.
All right. I'll make the motion to accept your conflict of interest in this particular case.
To determine that
To
there's a
determine,
conflict?
yes, yeah.
Okay. Is that supported?
Yeah, I'll second. I'll second.
Is there discussion on that motion? Okay,
You can call it.
I'll call it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right, so I'll step out for that case. Thank you. No other conflicts? Then just a quick rundown on how we'll handle each of the cases that we have public hearings for. We'll have staff present each case, and we'll invite the applicant up. They can share additional details with the commission. At that point, we'll have them take a seat and then invite the public to come forward if you're here today to speak on any particular cases. We'll do that one at a time, and just ask that you come up, state your name for the record, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. We will have a timer up here just to keep us on track. After that, we'll invite the applicant back up. They can address anything raised during the public hearing. Commission will have a discussion and make a decision before moving on to our next case. With that being said, we can get started with 840 Benson Ave Northeast. Laura can take us through this.
So our first case is at 840 Benson Avenue Northeast. The property is located east of College, west of Eastern, in the shaded green area on this map here. It is surrounded primarily by low-density residential. There is, just to the north, you can see it's the Grand Rapids Public Schools administrative building where they keep and store school buses. I didn't know that until I saw the map here. That's where school buses were stored. And the master plan identifies the area in which this property is located as medium low density residential, and the property to the north is identified as institutional. The request today is for is to operate a residential rehabilitation facility for up to 16 previously incarcerated men in the TN LDR zone district. Residential rehabilitation facilities require special land use approval. And this organization and the request to operate in at this location falls under the definition because it's adult residential care operated by either a government agency or private nonprofit organization with 24-hour care and supervision. And our definition includes homes group homes that include housing for ex-prisoners, adjusting from being incarcerated to self-sufficiency. This is an image of the house. It was constructed in the 70s by the county, Kent County. It was purpose-built for the use of an adult foster care or a group home setting. It has been in use as such. Because our zoning ordinance defines adult foster care separately from a residential rehabilitation facility, even though both are group living situations, it is considered a different use and a change of use that requires Planning Commission consideration today. The building, as you can see, is a large brick two-story building. The property on which it is located is about 3/4 of an acre. It's largely flat. You can see the building fits in the neighborhood. If going up and down the street, it looks very similar to several of the multifamily apartment buildings on the same street and on the streets adjacent. There is a two-stall garage on the property, and also you can see there's surface parking. On the overhead view, you can see there's a lot of green space on the property, a significant amount. The rear yard is fenced in. There's a privacy fence all around it. And at the rear of the property, between this property and the adjacent property to the east, there is a significant grade change, which I think adds to the privacy of the backyard of this property. There are, aside from some cosmetic changes, there are no building changes proposed with this request. If we look at the floor plan, you can see the layout. This house, because it was purpose-built for group living, it really does not lend itself to individual multifamily or a single-family home. It really is intended to be used as a group home. There is a manager's apartment on the west side of the building, and the intent is to continue. A manager will live there. An employee of the organization running this group home will live there and help manage the property and the daily ins and outs, the functioning of the home. There's a shared main kitchen, a large dining area, a large social area, living room. There's an office, a powder room, and of course the manager's apartment and quarters. On the second floor, you can see it's all bedrooms. There are 8 bedrooms. They are quite large. Each bedroom is about 255 square feet. Each bedroom includes its own bathroom, some built-in dressers and closet areas, and is large enough to accommodate 2 people comfortably. So the home would not house more than 16 people at a time. Each resident, speaking about the use, each resident must qualify for the program, and I will defer to the applicant to give more detail about how a resident qualifies and some of the house rules. Indicated in the packet submitted to you, there's a long document that does stipulate all of the house rules that the residents are expected to comply with while living there. It is not, in regards to parking, most residents are not expected to have their own vehicle, and based on the parking requirements in the zoning ordinance, 9 parking spaces are required. On the site, there is room for 8 vehicles. The applicant intends to create some striping in the paved parking area, and there's 2 parking spaces available in the garage. So that is a deficiency of 1 parking space. The Planning Commission, may waive that, may reduce the amount of parking required by that 1 space. Based on the availability of on-street parking. There is on-street parking on both sides of Benson Avenue. The applicant can share some detail about their engagement with the neighborhood association and members of the community. We did receive a letter of support from the Highland Park Neighborhood Association. The applicant also submitted letters of support from agency partners, and we did receive a letter of support from a neighbor in the community. So, before you today is the request to run this residential rehabilitation group home at this location. Does the Planning Commission have any questions?
Thanks, Laura. Commissioners, any questions?
I just have one. So it's up to 16 individuals in the program, plus the manager. Does any distinction need to be made to allow for the fact that there will also be a manager living in the home?
I think typically our resolutions do indicate how many residents versus staff would be residing on the property.
Okay, cool.
All right, no other questions? Thanks, Laura. I'll invite the applicant up if there are other details you'd like to share with us.
Good afternoon. Carl Gabriels on behalf of 70 times 7. In full disclosure, in addition to helping them with their legal matters, I'm also a volunteer mentor through their program. And so over the years, I've had the opportunity of walking with a number of previously incarcerated men as they try and navigate the ups and downs of reentering the community. With me today from 77 is its Chief Administrative Officer, Clay Reinking, and Housing Director, Brooke Bauman. And we have a board member, Nikki Edwards, in the room as well, and who also serves as a sergeant with the Kent County Sheriff's Department. And I won't put her on the spot, but I know Clay and Brooke are available afterwards to answer any questions that you might have that they can answer better than I can. We appreciate your time and certainly the time that the staff has put into reviewing the application and to creating the report. Between our application, the narrative statement that was shown on the screen, and the staff report, I don't know that there's much more that I need to talk about regarding the criteria of the special land use and how that fits together. Nothing is going to change about how the property is used other than that it will have a different population. Am I pressing a button? Did I just press a button? Okay, thank you. As the report indicates, this house was constructed in 1975 as a group home, and it's served in that capacity for almost 50 years now, I guess. 70 times 7 is requesting to continue that use as a group home, this time around providing structured housing to previously incarcerated individuals who are participating in 70 times 7's reentry program. And we understand that while the previous group home did not require a special land use, this one does, and so we're looking for your approval on that. As indicated, the building will be updated cosmetically, but no structural or material changes to the site or to the building are intended at this time. Quite frankly, 70 times 7 is quite excited about this opportunity to find a home like this that is so unique and so perfect for its mission of providing stable and structured housing and wraparound services to individuals that are rejoining our community. Every year, thousands of individuals are reintroduced into society from prisons. The numbers I've seen range from 8,000 to 11,000 a year in Michigan. So what's the recidivism rate in Michigan? Last year it was 22%. It's been in the 20s for a few years now. A decade ago, it was at 48%. And interestingly, if you look at brochures and pamphlets from that time, there was this start to recognize the need to provide these wraparound services, stable housing, counseling, mentoring, support, accountability, not just giving somebody a bus pass and saying, here you go, good luck. And so it's not just 70 times 7, it's other organizations, it's the Michigan Department of Corrections itself, recognizing these things and accomplishing the change from 48% recidivism to 22% that it was last year. So what about 70 times 7? Participants in its program have a recidivism rate of less than 5%. It's recognizing, again, that people coming out of prison need those wraparound support structure to assist them in making that transition and becoming a successful participant in life. So to turn those numbers both positive instead of the recidivism rate, and by the way, recidivism, based on these studies, by the criteria from the Michigan Department of Corrections, is does someone return to incarceration within 3 years of being released? So to turn those to positive, the general percentage for success, 78%. The percentage for success in 70 times 7's reentry program, more than 95% success. 70 times 7 is not the only one that's achieving those results. There's other fantastic nonprofits and faith-based organizations that are doing the same thing. It's when there is this support provided. This group home will allow 70 times 7 to provide stable housing and structured housing to 16 previously incarcerated individuals. And I want to identify that difference. Stable housing is one thing. Taking it up a notch is structured housing, where on-site is a trained, employed, and peer coaching certified manager on-site who's been certified by the Michigan Department of Housing and Human Services, I believe. Now, 16 beds isn't enough to solve the problem when there's thousands being released each year, but it's a start. And for those 16 individuals, it can be a life-changing event. Their success by getting a bed in this house jumps from 78% chance of turning their life around to more than 95%. That, I would suggest, is certainly good for them, but it's also good for our community and also good for the neighborhood. That's all I have as far as speaking to you. I will gladly answer questions now or defer to them to answer questions, or after public comment, if you will. So any questions?
All right, thank you. Questions for the applicant?
Yeah, thank you. So the manager's apartment is a 2-bedroom apartment. Will there be anybody else in like the manager's household other than the property manager peer?
I believe the
Cells.
intent is that there would not be any children residing there. It would simply be a manager and, if perhaps, a spouse or their partner,
Okay.
if there was one.
And then how many other staff will be going to and from the property in terms of when thinking about like parking and that kind of thing?
I know the housing director would certainly be one person that would that goes around to this and to other facilities that they have. Do you have any answer? Would it be more than that?
I would say myself regularly, and then intermittently our mentors and things like that, but not on a regular basis.
Okay.
So if
Could you either repeat that? Yeah, our recording secretary is not here, so need it on the audio.
The housing director from 70 times 7 clarified that she would be going there regularly. Additionally, the mentors for each of these participants in the program, so if, for example, if I'm a mentor for one of the people in the house, I would go there. But I believe that would not be all at once, where there would be a crowd there. It would be as it's scheduled on lunch breaks or after work. The mentor and the mentee would meet one-on-one.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I understand that the dumpster that exists will be removed and you're going to roll-off carts, is that correct?
I believe that is the intent, yes.
Okay. I guess if not, and you choose to keep the dumpster, we would expect that it would be screened appropriately. Bike parking, is there any bike parking that's available? I didn't see that addressed.
There is, on the back of the house, if you can see it's in front of you here, there is a large amount of concrete in the back area there, which would be inside the fence, which would allow for significant placement and security for bikes, yes.
Okay. And then lastly, just for the record, I'm wondering if you can talk about and I apologize, I didn't hear you say it, but the typical length of stay for the residents, and what are the procedures for when a resident moves in, and then when a resident maybe graduates the program or moves out? What are the hours of that? How does that typically happen?
I'm going to ask our housing director to prepare the answer to the second part. The first part is it's anticipated that the stay will be, an average of, let's say, 12 months, 12 to 18 months. That would be the goal is 18 months. We have assisted this person with jobs and the training that allows them to move on. So average of 12 months, they have seen instances in which somebody has really gotten their life together quicker than that. And there's no reason for us to be their crutch anymore. And so they'll move on quicker than that. Did you want to come up?
Can you remind me the second part?
Your intake and discharge procedures.
Okay, so when an individual moves in, I myself and the house manager would both be there. We'll go through the rules that they have already we have a reentry guideline book that I think has been provided here. So they should have been communicated to them by their referring source. Let's say it's a probation officer or parole agent or the treatment and support court here in Grand Rapids or drug court, sobriety court, what have you. And I kind of go over that over the phone. Then I reiterate it again, show them around the property. I usually I've been doing housing through a different organization for 9 years. So so I haven't been doing it, but this is how I'm envisioning it. So I'm like going to re-go through them, but I like to make it more just not pressured that first day, because it's pretty overwhelming to move into a brand new house with other people. So really just sitting together and getting to know each other with that peer-based approach, like this is your home, and making them comfortable, but making sure that they have services in place for their life. Like we have an RCSI form that evaluates their needs. So we fill that out and quickly see they need to get an ID. So we have our next mobile unit of ID coming from the Secretary of State to our Grand Rapids office soon. Do they need a job? We have a contract with B2, so if we have openings there, I could help them with that, and just really identifying their needs, but not I'm loosely making their plan without overwhelming them that day. So is that...
But what are the hours of that? Could a resident move in at 2 o'clock in the morning? Or is that between like an 8 and 5?
My goal would be between 9 to 5, but sometimes the Kent County Jail, if they're released around 7:30, I'm not going to tell them they have to be out in the community we'll do it. That's what's really unique about having an employee on site, that really we could do it at 7:30 if they were released early from jail or what have you. But yeah, not during the middle of the night. There's curfews and stuff, so there won't be a lot of coming and going.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? All right, thanks. I'll have you take a seat. I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today about this case at 840 Benson Ave Northeast, I invite you to come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us.
Hello, my name is Matt DeYoung, and I'm the owner of 810 Benson, 823 Benson, 827 Benson that are direct neighbors, 835 Grand, 865 Grand that are down the hill behind this property on Benson, and the 8 additional properties across the street on Grand Avenue. That's a total of 52 apartments that can see this property we're discussing today. In the last 15 years, I've owned and operated properties in Highland Park. Every tenant has had to pass a criminal background check that ensures every resident in the properties has passed a criminal background check. This proposal we're talking today goes 100% against everything I've done to improve the neighborhood over the last 15 years. I would not have invested the time and money into these properties to improve the neighborhood knowing this was even a possibility. 16 incarcerated men under one roof is dangerous and unsettling for my tenants. I have single moms and single females living on their own right next door. They would not have rented my apartments knowing this rehabilitation facility was right next door. I have to disclose to all my tenants living within sight of this property, of this rehabilitation center, and who is staying there. This will leave negative impacts on my properties and the neighborhood. If my tenants feel unsafe, I have to let them out of their leases. The zoning rules are here to protect us from this and should not be altered. They are asking to operate a small hotel for convicts. These men are not here for tax evasion, and they are not here for petty theft. These will be intimidating men walking around the neighborhood. It is not fair to us who have been here first. Please do not take our safety and peace of mind for granted. I'm speaking on behalf of my 80 tenants and as the owner of these 52 neighboring properties. It's my responsibility to look out for the safety of my tenants, and it's your responsibility to look out for the property owners. We hope that you please do not approve this proposal. Thresholds Ministry was the previous tenant at 840 Benson, and they were not a concern nor a threat to the neighborhood. Being that I'm the direct neighbor, do you have any questions for me? I believe in their goals and their mission plan. It's amazing. I love it. And I wish I was there to support them more. But there has to be other places in the neighborhood that can put this up. It's more of like a commercial area where there aren't already tenants that are rooted there. People will move and they will be uprooted. And we were there, and they were only there because they know these people weren't going to be there. Thresholds Ministry was a great organization, and I know the Christian beliefs behind both of them are wonderful, and I support all of that. But there are tenants that live in my properties that are very concerned, and listening to just the proposal alone it's unsettling. People don't like that. There are people coming direct from jail, in the Kent County Jail, going right into this house, and they can leave at any point in time. They're not holding them there. They would like them to be there for 18 months, but they could leave in 18 hours. And then they're on the streets in our neighborhood.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Please take that into consideration.
Anyone else on this case today? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Anything you'd like to add, or commissioners, are there questions for the applicant at this time? All right, then discussion.
Maybe just to clarify, these are individuals who have served their time and they're
Correct.
members of our society.
I think this property is ideal for this kind of use, it was built for group use, and the organization has included in their application comprehensive policies and procedures for the operation of this home. I'm not concerned about the use, and I don't think it will have a negative impact on the property. Kind of unrelated to land use, I guess I would encourage any neighbors that are notifying other neighbors about it that maybe frame that appropriately and not fearmonger. But yeah, no, I'm supportive.
I just wondered whether it would be helpful if the applicant maybe described some of their safety policies and procedures that are in place. And it sounds like with their experience, perhaps there have been incidents in the past and how they've responded, or rates of incidents, if you think that would be helpful.
So in our rule book, guidelines, what have you, you'll see that if there's any criminal behavior, what have you, any new crimes committed, they'll be asked to leave. On our end, we will help them find appropriate setting that's different than ours. A lot of the individuals will be on parole or probation, so they would be reincarcerated if they did. I've been doing housing for 9.5 years. In the city of Grand Rapids, 85 beds. One of the houses is in Highland Park, right around the corner from this house. And it's 10 men, and I keep it, how it's been safe is that rules, structure, accountability, and support. And so all the rules actually enforcing the rules that are in the book. And so if somebody's starting to violate the curfew or what have you, and it might seem small and simple to us, we're actually going to talk to them and not be like a dictator and a rule enforcer, but talk to them about how, hey, if we communicate we're going to be here at this time, we need to be here. Because we're retraining our thinking to follow rules in this house because we've violated society's laws. So that's why we're here today. And I really don't, most people leave before they do that and not go on the streets in the community. They go back to their original place usually. And so people that are, no one is going to be admitted that's got alcohol or drugs in their system. They're drug tested upon entry, so it isn't like they're actively using alcohol or other drugs. So yeah, there's just a lot of everything that's in place to make sure that individuals can find a place of healing, follow a set of rules, and move forward in their lives. So I don't know if there's any other questions or if I covered it well enough, so.
No, that was fine. I just thought, I realized that
No,
you
that's
submitted
great.
information, but I think sometimes it's helpful to have these things spoken.
And I also, with the houses that I've operated with the neighbors, what I do is we have a good neighborly policy through the certification process through the Michigan Association of Recovery Residences, and we'll have that certification. There's a good neighbor policy where the individuals are held accountable to no loitering, no this, because there's a stigma on this population of people already, and so we don't want to contribute to that stigma, and we talk about that openly, and we follow the certifying body's good neighbor policy, like we don't sit outside on the front porch and smoke cigarettes. We have a fenced-in backyard where you can safely smoke a cigarette and dispose of it here, and so I've never had. There's been a couple neighbor complaints of just more, I don't know, like it is like fear-mongering in the community, like I have, but I build a relationship with them saying, come to me and talk to me about your questions and concerns. Like, I want to talk to you, and I want you guys to feel safe and heard so that I can help the individuals all around. Because really, these are the best neighbors to have. I've noticed is that they don't drink, they don't use, there's no loud stereos at night because we've got an employee on site that's going to say, we can't have that running. And so I get it though. I totally get it. I get the fear, but I'm like, best neighbors to have, seriously, because they've got a lot to lose if they can't be here. So yeah, thank you.
I just want to echo what a few commissioners have already said. People who have served their time for their crime and are now re-entering society. I think places like this are really good, and I think the community should thank places like you all for helping them to re-enter society in a more positive way. Fear-mongering won't help anybody. So if you got 80 people moving out of your neighborhood because you're scared of 16 people who were formerly incarcerated moving in, that's not like a problem for those 80 people. But I think here, changing the language, not fear-mongering, and explaining to people what's happening, I think is important. Also, these people who are formerly incarcerated are also people. They're grown adults who I'm sure, with the help of the folks that we have on site, can follow the rules. And if they don't, there's responsibilities for that. They've been to jail. They know this already. And so I think we just allow them to do what they do. And we support them, of course, because they are supporting and helping our communities. And with that, I'm done.
I'm happy to make the motion. There are no other.
I just was hoping maybe a little bit more discussion about why this is an appropriate location for this type of use as well. I've heard a lot about the importance of the use in our community, but just maybe talking a little bit more specific about this location, please.
Yeah, I mean, this is a residential use in a residential neighborhood. There won't be any traffic impacts. They have appropriate parking. The one deficient space, there's plenty of street parking to deal with that. I don't have that off the top of my head. Oh, sure.
I was just suggesting that because it's well connected to transit, just a couple of blocks away from College.
I do think the unenclosed dumpster is inappropriate, and they've already addressed the fact that they will be taking care of that.
Yeah, I don't know if staff can draft a condition or if, as you're thinking about it, but if the dumpster doesn't go away, that there is appropriate screening done.
Are we set? Okay. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use and site plan review request of 70 by 7 Life Recovery Clay Rinking to operate a residential rehabilitation facility for up to 16 previously incarcerated men in the TNLDR zone district at 840 Benson Avenue Northeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will help maintain the number and variety of housing units to meet the diverse needs of existing residents, master plan objectives GN3, and promote the rehabilitation and reuse of an existing building. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.08.e because the parking area improvements are proposed to include striping and additional landscaping. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment, because the proposed use will be a continuation of the multi-residential use of the property that has been already established for many years. And the proposed use is anticipated to be a low-impact residential use, and an on-site property and program manager will have permanent residence on the property. The proposed use will not have adverse effects on the neighborhood because adequate on-site parking will be provided, as it is anticipated that residents will not own their own vehicle and will utilize carpools and public transportation. And existing site conditions, including the backyard privacy fence, will adequately screen and buffer neighboring properties from outside activities. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses, or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic noise or visual clutter, because the program's strict guidelines for visitors and guests will minimize the potential of excessive traffic, and the proposed use is residential, and the program will incorporate quiet outdoor activities such as vegetable gardening for residents. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment, because the existing building, parking area, and fence are appropriately situated on the site in compliance with the TN neighborhood requirements. Adequate public or private infrastructure and services already exist. No additional burden is expected with the establishment of this use. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability and/or economic welfare of the city, because the intent of the program is to result in placement of financially stable, independent individuals that will contribute to the economic welfare of the city. What's happening with 5C here? The proposed use will comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and applicable state laws. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard condition set A approvals, which are on your screen, and I'll read, that the testimony, application, and plans submitted by the applicant and signed, dated, and stamped by the planning director shall constitute the approved plans, except if plan elements do not meet ordinance requirements and/or as amended in this resolution. That the use shall operate according to the application and per testimony as recorded in the Planning Commission minutes. That this approval does not include any proposed signs, and any future signs shall be subject to the requirements of Article 15 of the ordinance and permits received prior to installation. That a land use development services LUD's permit, building permit, and all the required permits be obtained from the City of Grand Rapids prior to construction, demolition, or operation. That any expansion of the approved special land use requires an additional special land use review and approval by the Planning Commission. That the proposed use will comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and all state laws. That this approval shall take effect 16 calendar days after the date of the Planning Commission's decision. Number 2, that the use shall accommodate no more than 16 residents at one time. And number 3, did you craft anything, or do you want me to go ahead and?
I did, if you'd like. That if a commercial dumpster is used, it shall be screened as required by the zoning ordinance.
Number 3.
I'll support, but I also have a couple.
Okay, so we have a motion and support. Go ahead, discussion.
I'm wondering if under condition 2, we could add plus the house manager's household under that. And then I'm also wondering if at the beginning, we change it from previously incarcerated men to previously incarcerated people. That's it.
I'm okay with that.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. Our next case is 2022, also known as 2078 East Beltline Ave Northeast. And Elizabeth will walk us through this case.
The next item on the agenda is a request for a new veterinary clinic in the village at Knapp's Crossing. The clinic is proposed to occupy the former, the site of the former Bravo restaurant, just north of the main entrance off the East Beltline Avenue. This is coming to the Planning Commission today because according to the planned redevelopment ordinance for this development, a veterinary clinic requires special land use approval. The site is zoned as a planned redevelopment district, and it's also in the East Beltline overlay. For the most part, the East Beltline overlay district, or East Beltline overlay addresses building setbacks, parking setbacks, and landscaping, but it also identifies this intersection of Knapp and the East Beltline as a town center, and that although it doesn't address use, it does identify the area that has it's a more concentrated commercial area. The subject site was originally identified as this building K. It was originally developed slightly differently than what was originally proposed. The building's a little bit smaller, but it's about a 7,000 square foot building. It has a sort of an entrance vestibule, a canopy, and then at the rear, there's a cooler. You can see that it is nicely landscaped, and there is an outdoor patio on the front facing the East Beltline. Here are some Google Street View photos of the building. And you can see in the back here the, oh, I don't know, that didn't really work out very well. There's the cooler in the back. So originally, the applicant had not completed floor plans or elevations, and we received them yesterday. And I included them into the packet and updated the staff report. But since I haven't had a whole lot of time to review them, I'll defer to the applicant for detailed questions. A couple of things that I can mention is that several enclosures are proposed. I'm pointing them out here. 2 of them are proposed on the East Beltline side in the patio area. They will be attached to exam rooms, and they are proposed to be 6-foot-high fenced-in enclosures with a 9-foot-tall pergola. One of them is identified as an outside exam room, and the other is outside comfort, and I'm afraid I don't know what that means. I'll defer to the applicant to explain that. On the interior side, there is a storage kind of building proposed to be attached to the building, and then a dog relief yard, which would have the same design as the enclosures in the front with the 6-foot-tall fence and a pergola above. And here are building elevations. It's substantially the same as what's existing there today. There is a planned sign program that is associated with this building, and that's what the applicant would be allowed relative to signage. I'll point out here on the slides those enclosures, 1, 2, 3, and then the storage area. Here's the storage area and then the rear dog run. As far as operations, no circulation or parking changes are proposed. The use does not propose any boarding, and no pet crematorium is proposed. We don't have a waste removal plan as part of the application, so that might be something to explore with the applicant. Hours of operation are relatively limited, 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., and they're anticipating 40 to 80 patients per day. Here are a few photos of other existing VCA facilities. This is the one on Michigan Street, and this is the enclosure in the backyard of the Michigan Street facility. I have not received any public input on this, and I'll defer to the applicant to talk more about public outreach. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Elizabeth? All right, thank you. I'll invite the applicant up if there are other things you'd like to share with us.
How you doing? I'm Bill Mast. I work with Vista Brothers and part represent the ownership of East Beltline Development, the center in which this building is located. We're applying for special land use because special land use is required, because this use is defined as a personal service use, I think. And I've got special land uses in the past for hotels, for liquor licenses, where you can anticipate odd hours, late night, outdoor music, anything that might be offensive to neighbors. And I guess that's why special land uses exist, so that something that's anticipatable, but that may have some quirky effect on surrounding neighbors be considered. And I've wrestled with the application the whole time, trying to figure out what it is about a vet clinic that may generate questions. We own the land surrounding all 3 sides, the east, north, and south sides of this building, and we have reached out to all of our tenants and have received no objections or comments or questions from them. We didn't reach out till recently, but when I got Elizabeth's review and the fact that we hadn't, I figured we would. We did, and they haven't. Across the west side of us is the East Beltline itself, and then Celebration Cinema's development on the west side of the East Beltline. It's a true statement, as far as I can ascertain from looking at all the aerial photographs and as much time as I've spent on the site, that this building cannot be seen from a residence. So I don't think that if vet clinics were offensive to residences, I don't think it would be appropriate. Some of the things I tried to anticipate why a vet clinic might need a special land use, and I go to dog smells, odors, those kinds of things. This is not a boarding facility. They do not board. It's not a surgical facility. It's a vet clinic for checkups. And so even then I thought, okay, we got buildup of urine smells or poop or anything like that. And then when I was talking with the people that do this for a living, and they gave me some things to consider, to offer. They have 800 of these clinics. They don't have over 800. They don't board dogs long enough or animals long enough to have them need to use the restroom typically. I mean, if you think of a vet visit, you go, you get your dog checked out, and you drive them away. So it's rare that the relief area would ever be used. Given that, they still have one. It's expected to, or it's drawn to replace the coolers that are there on the back side of the building right now, be completely fenced in, and they use a product that I'm not familiar with. It's an AstroTurf type product for the animal industry called Tiger Turf. So that would be what they would use on the east side inside their enclosure. We welcome them. The building's been vacant for 3 years, 3.5, I guess, since COVID hit. And restaurants are, they're good tenants when they're there, but they do tend to come and go. Pets seem to be somewhat inflation or recession proof, and given that we might have one of those coming at us in the not too distant future, I think having it filled with a vet clinic would be a welcome traffic generator for the surrounding retail tenants. So the center welcomes them. The lease is signed. I didn't get this application done until after the lease was signed because I didn't want to commit the building to something that it didn't need to be committed to, but we would very much appreciate your consideration and approval today. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, can you talk about how trash and waste is handled?
There's a commercial dumpster on the back side. It's in, I think, in one of Elizabeth's pictures. And it's the dumpster that Bravo used. It'll be, and then our center does not impose hours for dumpsters, but these people, when I talk to these people about what they do, they contract with a waste hauler that's already hauling waste from the center's other tenants, and then they will add it to one of those runs, so it'll be done daily at the same times.
And then, can you talk about what the outdoor, was it a rest? Is that what the comfort area?
I think that's where a dog goes when it's under sedation and it's recovering, if it's a nice day. I mean, it's as much as I could get out of them for that.
Okay. And then about so the proposed fenced enclosures on the front for the exam room and comfort area, they're on the front of the building. Can you talk about like materials and how you anticipate that working with the building design and architecture and visual kind of?
We have an interest in that as well because it's, front door to our whole development. They've listed, these are the preliminary plans that they have shared. All I can see on them is what you can see, that it's a wood pergola, which is an architectural feature that's not necessary in the first place, but it's designed to enhance it. If the fence comes back ugly, I would think that we would reject it or require them to do something different, and I'd welcome a condition from the Planning Commission that we run whatever their final design is by planning staff and or the building department.
Thanks.
If no other questions at this time, I'll have you take a seat. I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today about this case, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any discussion or additional questions on this case?
Kristen, just for both the record and just for general education, could we possibly get like a very brief snippet of why this needs a special land use or site plan review?
Yes, and I will let Elizabeth supplement if needed. But when you look at how this PRD, or Planned Redevelopment District, was originally created, the Planning Commission and City Commission determined that all future uses shall comport with the transit-oriented development use table. And when you think about a transit-oriented development, this may not be the most similar to that style of development. Transit-oriented developments are typically far more compact and do have a higher volume of density, residential, closer in proximity. And so having a veterinarian clinic, which includes boarding by definition, may include boarding. I understand that that's not the intent of this particular operator, but having a boarding facility, having potential surgical stations within a veterinarian, having the animal bio-waste also needing to be disposed of in a more dense urban area is typically a pause for, and hours of operation as well, typically a pause for us to look and see whether it's appropriate. I don't think you have those same conditions here, so I think perhaps, your analysis might be far simpler than what it would be in a typical TOD, but that's the basis. So it starts because Planning Commission, City Commission made a policy decision to follow the use table of the transit-oriented development. Now, whether that was an appropriate determination at that time, or we should have used a different use table, that's something that, I think is, a good argument or a good discussion, perhaps a little too late, and perhaps we think about that in the future. And we could even pull out certain uses based on conditions of where the PRD is being applied for. But that's the history of why. So I think in this particular case, it might feel less relevant. But because of that condition of the PRD itself, you're obligated to go through the special land use process and make that evaluation.
Thank you.
If I could add one thing, veterinary clinics are special land uses in all commercial zone districts.
So thank you. And Carol, what Elizabeth said is that veterinarian clinics are always special land uses in zone districts, and likely for the reasons I've mentioned, because there is a wide variety of activities that can take place at a veterinarian clinic, just depends on the individual operator.
I'm sorry, just another general question. I'm looking through the application, and I know up on our proposed, our drafted resolutions here, we don't have them, but do we have, let's say, the references here, let's say for site plan review, section 5.12.08, do we include the language of those statutes or those ordinances in the application or on the application for the applicant to review?
Are you asking if... Are you asking if the applicant is aware of all the standards that need to be reviewed as part of a site plan review and special land use?
Yeah. More or less standards, but more specifically, just the language, referencing the particular ordinances. So, for instance, the site plan review, section 5.12.08, if I'm an applicant, will I see that language? What is section 5.12.08?
The special land use application includes all the standards for the special land use, and the applicant, and it's in the application, it's in your packet.
Got you.
So they need to address all of them. Not so much for site plan review. We incorporate that by reference.
Got
We
you.
don't list all those different things.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Having said all that about the TOD, in this particular case, I think this is meant to be a town center, village center kind of a location, and I do think this use is compatible and would supplement all the other uses in that development.
Yeah, I agree, and there's obviously plenty of parking, so that's not an issue to consider here either. I am a little concerned about the fencing on the front and what that looks like, and therefore would welcome staff to draft some sort of condition to help ensure that it doesn't end up just a wooden fence on the front of that building. Would be.
So your front yard fence requirements could be applied where it must be a decorative or ornamental style fence that has either a minimum transparency, I'm thinking the pool fencing, you could require a finish like that in lieu of what may be slatted wood fencing. I can't really tell what is being proposed, but you could certainly apply additional conditions to require it to be more decorative, like the aluminum pool style fencing.
Okay. Great.
I believe it's wooden privacy fence, and I would assume that it's intentionally privacy fence.
Thank you for those concerns. We, as the landlord, appreciate them as well. It's what's drawn is their initial drawing that's submitted on this special land use application. The implementation of those uses still has to come through. I'm sure it probably LUDs. I don't know if change of use triggers that, but at least the building department. And we would welcome, I personally would welcome a requirement that the fencing be somewhat decorative, more than just what was shown in the picture on the backside of the Michigan facility.
I think this would be, and it sounds like Bill's in agreement, but this would be atypical for a front yard fence that's so highly visible. We would definitely push for a decorative style fence.
Great. Yeah, then staff review to make sure that happens would be awesome. Thank you. I'm happy to make a motion unless there's more discussion. Okay. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the request of East Beltline Development LLC, William T. Mast, for special land use and site plan review approval to establish a veterinary clinic at 2022 aka 2078 East Beltline Avenue Northeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district. Because the proposed use will support the vitality of the business district, the proposed use will provide a mix of uses in a commercial area. Destination-oriented, high-intensity businesses and services with dependence on motor vehicles are anticipated in the town center location of the East Beltline. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of Section 5.12.08.e because the existing site layout and building elements were designed to meet the requirements of the zone district. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment because the proposed use will support the desired future character of the neighborhood by providing a variety of personal services. The use will complement other uses in the development. The proposed use will not have adverse effects on the neighborhood because adequate parking will be provided and the building orientation will not change. The proposed uses will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic noise or odors because no boarding of animals will be conducted as part of this use. Excessive noise is not anticipated. Odors will be addressed by regular trash pickup and property maintenance. And a pet supply store which welcomes animals currently exists in the shopping center and operates without incident. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the site design is not specific to the proposed use. Adequate public or private infrastructure and services already exist or will be provided at additional cost or no additional cost, and the proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city because the use will not place an unfair burden on city services, and the use may encourage other investment in the area. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard condition set A, approvals, which is on your screen. And then
That the proposed fencing be constructed of wrought iron or decorative aluminum. Use of landscape screening may be used to provide additional privacy or screening if needed.
yes.
That's it.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. Our next case is 340 State Street Southeast. And Laura will take us through this case. No, Elizabeth? All right.
We've been working as a team on these, so, oops, I brought the wrong. Okay. Here we go. Okay. The next item is 340 State Street, and Dog Story Theater is requesting approval to establish a theater in this building. They're also asking for a parking waiver, and this is before you today because theaters or any kind of assembly uses do require special land use approval in the TN-TCC zone district. This is in the Transitional City Center Zone District. You can see that on the map here. We've got the downtown zoning a little bit to the west, and we've got low-density residential to the north and south. And we have this area of Transitional City Center along State Street. It's also in the Heritage Hill Historic District. So any exterior changes or renovations would need historic preservation approval. The property is located at the corner of State and I think this is actually Prospect right here. This is showing Lafayette, but I think it is Prospect. And the property's pretty small. It's about 4,500 square feet in area, and the building's about 3,600 square feet in area. The area to be occupied by the theater is about a little bit less than 2,000 square feet, and then we do have a Chinese restaurant next door. The area to be occupied is this 340 State, so that's from this door to the end of the building here. As you can see, there's lots of windows, and there is an overhead door that is accessible from the street. On the front facade, I'm not aware of any exterior changes proposed. I do believe that there is a change proposed on the back that I don't believe is material to this discussion. The applicant can go through that change if necessary. That will need historic preservation review. This is the side of the building. It looks like a little alley. This is actually on the subject property, and then here is the side of the building. This is the floor plan of the proposed theater. We've got the existing restaurant on the right side of the slide, and then the floor plan shows the performance space, back of house, lobby area. That overhead door would lead, that goes into a garage or a storage area. They plan to use that for storage. They are proposing to have 68 seats initially, with a future build-out of 84. Let's see here. The proposed use is a performance space. I understand that the space is leased to various acting companies, and they will utilize this space for performances. I don't think the Dog Story Theater has its own performance troupe, but I'll defer to the applicants to talk about that. Performances are generally on the weekends. Thursday through Saturday, 7 p.m. to 10:15 p.m. Let's see here. There is no alcohol proposed. The applicants do intend a couple of biannual fundraisers at which alcohol may be served, and I think I did include that in the as a condition of approval, that other than those two events, that alcohol would not be served as part of this use. Relative to parking, there's no parking on site, as you can see here, and so they would be asking for a 100% parking waiver. I looked at Mobile GR's parking survey. I believe that was from this spring. There on this little black dot here is the subject site. On the north side of State, there's metered parking. On the south side, it's unrestricted except for a loading zone. And then there's various other restrictions in other blocks, but I was concentrating on the subject block. The occupancy review from this spring shows that on the north side, which is the metered side, there's very low occupancy of parking, and on the south side, that is unrestricted, has higher occupancy, up to 75%. We did receive a letter from a resident of this block who did point this out, and while he did not express concerns about the use, he did have some concerns about parking. The applicant also did a comprehensive parking survey, and I'll let them explain their findings. But I do believe that they are consistent with what was found, or they're consistent with the findings of Mobile GR. Let's see here. In addition, although they don't have a formal agreement, the applicant does have has a relationship with Catholic Charities, which is on Jefferson, I'm sorry. They're on Jefferson at 40 Jefferson, across the street from where Dog Story used to be located. And they have permission to also utilize Catholic Charities parking lot for parking. I'll let the applicant talk a little bit more about that if necessary. So in sum, there is parking availability in the vicinity, and the area is also served by transit. We also have received a letter of support from the Heritage Hill Neighborhood Association. Do you have any questions for me before I turn it over to the applicant?
Are there requirements for the trash enclosure? So like in the picture you showed, there were like 3 kind of rolling dumpsters.
Excellent question. I think it may be challenging to construct a permanent enclosure there. I would also say that, I mean, in this case, they're not doing any exterior improvements, so it may not rise to the level of constructing that. Kristen, do you have anything you'd like to add to that? I don't know how they could put a permanent enclosure on this. I would also suggest that the amount of trash that this theater will be generating would be relatively minimal. Most likely the trash is for the Chinese restaurant. I didn't answer that question at all, but those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
Isn't there a area-specific plan for State Street?
Yes. Yes, there is.
Does it have any bearing on this situation?
We looked at it, and I don't believe it does. It's the area-specific plan, the State Street plan, isn't formally adopted, and I think that's why I didn't include it. And I think there was a general recommendation, I believe, for residential uses in this area. And that would probably be relative to any new redevelopment, like on this parking lot, or anything that could be redeveloped. And, you know, we have this building here. So I can't tell you specifically. I'll look it up, and if there's something relevant, I'll let you know.
Any other questions at this time? All right, then I'll invite the applicant up if there are other details you'd like to share with us.
Hi, my name's Jay Harnish. I'm the president of Dog Story Theater. I have with me Travis Williams from In Parallel Architects and Builders and Duke Gray, who works at Blue House and kind of helped us find the place and broker the deal. Dog Story Theater has been around for 15 years, and unfortunately we had to close during the pandemic. It can get a little bit scary, I think, when you think of theater in the terms you might think of DeVos or Spectrum Theater or something like that. But what this is a storefront theater model. And it's uniquely Grand Rapids in that it's not just its own theater company. Dog Story Theater actually doesn't have its own theater company. Dog Story Theater is a nonprofit that provides access to a space for smaller theater companies to be able to put on shows, for playwrights to be able to produce their own show, actors in college to get together and do a new Shakespeare show. It offers that opportunity, an entry level or an easier barrier to get through to smaller groups that don't have a lot of finances to start up. So as far as the trash goes, when that was brought up, we'll probably have rolling carts. We could probably put those in the garage if we need to. We'll do a lot of recycling because if anything, it'd be play programs, right? That we would have. Concessions that we would have would be, whatever we can get our concessions license with, probably like candy or something like that, what we've used in the past. So there wouldn't be a lot of trash associated with that. If you're worried about set building, well, most of our sets are already built in storage right now, so those would go into the garage. So there wouldn't be a lot to do with that. But yeah, so as far as parking goes, I know that there's been a lot of discussion about the parking. We're only going to have about like 50 people on average. I said that the times were about 7 to 10:15, being that the show will probably be about, shows will probably be about 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. People leave quickly, so that's why I said 10:15. Show might get done at like 9:30. 7 o'clock's when people start arriving, like actors and staff, but really the public these days, they don't show up till about 5 minutes before a show. Whereas theater used to be, the house opens, people used to come hang out and meet each other, and now we just do it on Facebook. In the area there, we're Catholic. We had a relationship with Catholic Charities when we were at 7 Jefferson. The people who go to Dog Story Theater are familiar with walking to Dog Story Theater because at 7 Jefferson there wasn't a lot of parking either. And they're familiar with that neighborhood. Another thing is that probably with people going out and having drinks and dinner, there'll be a lot of Ubering going on too. I know a lot of the younger performers that are in college, they use public transportation more than some of us do. And I don't think the parking's going to be a big concern. I have talked to our neighbors across the street and had a real positive conversation with Andrew about if we could possibly use the parking lot across the street for overflow, or at least to get staff off the street and create more spaces. And we've been talking about that a little bit. In return, I can offer AV services. I know he talked about how they do private in-house events at their building. And I said, if you have overflow, you can come over to us and we can help each other out in that way. I also run an AV company, and so I do conferences a lot. So I would be more than willing to help them out over there. We are a nonprofit that wants to work with other nonprofits, especially in the community and our neighbors. As far as any of the changes to the building goes, I'd defer to Travis on that. I might be able to answer a couple things. And yeah, we'd appreciate your consideration for approval. Do you have any questions?
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? All right, thanks.
Thanks.
I'll open up a public hearing. If you're here today about this case, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us. All right, seeing no one jump up, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, questions of the applicant at this point? No?
Oh, go ahead.
I think this is a great use of the building. I think it's appropriate for where it is. I think it's a very walkable space, plenty of public transportation. I'm not real worried about the parking situation. Yeah, I'm in support of this project.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is a small theater space. I mean, if you go downtown to theater at DeVos Center, like, you're walking many blocks. Like, I don't think, I'm not concerned about the parking here. I think their plan is laid out well. They're going to have to do the soundproofing and all of that inside to make sure there's nothing escaping in that realm. But yeah, I'm in support of this use too. I think it's a great use of this space in this location in the city. Any other things you think we should discuss?
I don't know if you want to, going back to the area-specific plan, although not officially adopted by the city, it is a plan that is closely followed by the Heritage Hill Association. In the letter that they supplied to the Planning Commission, they did make a finding that they believe it does comport with their area-specific plan, citing an encouragement of commercial and institutional development. Should put on my glasses. The plan encourages to establish the perception reality that it's a clean and safe street, foster a social environment targeted to nearby residents, employers, and visitors through the use of events, programs, and developments. So again, not an official plan of the city, but certainly one that we understand and support the Heritage Hill utilizing that to help guide their decisions, and it seems to comport with their vision.
Sure. Yeah, I also related to the parking, the fact that this is in a walkable neighborhood and there are a couple transit lines nearby also supports the parking waiver. I'm happy to make a motion.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Make sure I'm on the right one. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use and site plan review request of Dog Story Theater J. Harnish to establish a theater in an existing building at 340 State Street Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will support the purpose and intent of the TNTCC zone district by contributing to a compact, transit-friendly, walkable, mixed-use environment. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.8.e because the building is existing and substantially conforms with the TNTCC zone district site layout and building element requirements. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment because the proposed use will be consistent with the desired mixed-use nature of the neighborhood and will provide a desired amenity in the area. Then the use will activate an underutilized building. The proposed use will not have adverse effects on the neighborhood because the operator or their designee will be on the premises during events, and entertainment will be fully contained indoors. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, or visual clutter, because the timing of parking needs for the theater use will coordinate with existing low usage periods of parking in the surrounding area. The applicant has indicated that appropriate soundproofing and baffling measures will be in place. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment, because the proposed use will enrich the existing street front and encourage walkability by adding to the variety of uses in the vicinity. And on-site parking is not available, and theater attendees will likely walk, utilize public transit, or find other means of transportation to the site. Adequate public or private infrastructure and services already exist, and no additional burden is expected with the establishment of this use. And the proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of their city because the use will activate a currently vacant building and encourage other investment in the area. And the use is unique from and compatible with neighboring businesses. And the proposed use will not will comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and all applicable state laws. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard conditions at A, approvals, which is on the screen. 2, that events shall cease by 11 p.m. They've requested around 10:15. I'm happy to hear. All right, 11 p.m. daily. 3, that the operator or their designee shall be on the premises during all events. 4, that the theater may seat up to 84 individuals, subject to occupancy determination by the city's building official and applicable building and fire codes. 5, the alcohol use shall not be permitted except during private fundraising events held biannually. 6, that an indoor events license shall be obtained from the office of the city clerk.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Discussion?
I was wondering if you'd be open to striking the held biannually on condition number 5, since
sure.
the city's temporary use for events are more permissive, so it seems like an unnecessary restriction.
Sure. Strike held biannually.
Maybe it's, instead of that, private fundraising events as permitted by the temporary use requirements of the zoning ordinance.
Perfect.
All right, still supportive?
Yep.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next case is 724 Wealthy Street Southeast.
No, that's this one. Okay. The next item on the agenda is 724 Wealthy, the Givio restaurant. The Givio restaurant. And that restaurant has been there for several years. It was preceded by another restaurant that was established in 2017. And at that time, the previous restaurant did get approval for outdoor seating and a parking waiver. And the current restaurant is asking to expand the outdoor seating area by putting in an outdoor bar for alcohol service. And by doing that, they would be eliminating 2 of the outdoor parking spaces. So they're looking for an expansion of the alcohol use and reduction of the parking. So the subject property is located in the TNTBA zone district. It is in a historic district as well, and so any outdoor changes will need historic preservation review. The applicant is aware of that. This is the floor plan and site plan that was approved in association with the original restaurant on the site. There was 24 outdoor seats and 4 parking spaces and a trash enclosure. Originally, there were no parking spaces. I believe the site was all grass. So, so this was a change to what was there. And so this is what was approved, and the applicant now wishes to remove 2 of those parking spaces and put in this this vintage RV for alcohol service, and I'll let the applicant talk about that. And so they want to take over 2 of those parking spaces for additional seating. What is sort of interesting is that the original approval was for 24 outdoor seats. The applicant has only been using they've only been seating 16 guests outside, and they want to expand to 24. So the number of people seated outside won't increase, but the area will. I think the bigger issue might be the permanent fixture of the van for alcohol service. The restaurant doesn't operate late at night. I think they closed, let's see, they have approval from the previous use, 9:30 p.m. weekdays, and then Friday and Saturday until 10:30 p.m. Our applicant closes at 9, so indoor and outdoor. So the operation will, is less than what was originally approved. They do propose a 6-foot-high fence. That is, all those outdoor changes are really going to be subject to historic preservation. So I think we can defer discussion of that or leave it to the HPC. I have a photo here that shows the outdoor seating area in winter when it was not being used. I also want to point out that the parking area is accessible from the city parking lot, and a condition of approval from the previous user was the execution of a license agreement to utilize city property to access the parking area and the trash enclosure. That didn't get fully executed and recorded. The applicant has been working with Mobile GR on executing that agreement. It may have already gone to City Commission, and if it hasn't, the agreement will be going at, I think, the next City Commission meeting. Two of the 4 parking spaces are proposed to be removed. So they will now, they're limited on parking, so they're asking for that parking waiver. As you can see, there is a parking lot, right next to them, as well as across the street. And in addition to that, there's also on-street parking in the neighborhood. So in sum, we're looking at removal of 2 parking spaces, expansion of the outdoor patio, and addition of the RV for alcohol service. Do you have any questions for me?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Any questions at this time, commissioners? All right, thanks. I'll invite the applicant up if there are other things you'd like to share with us.
Hello, my name is Dennis Deratovic. I am one of the co-owners of Givio. My father and brother are part of the other co-owners. They weren't able to attend because we work day to day in the restaurant, physically in it. So both of us are usually there at the time. So I'm here attending alone on their behalf as well. Thank you guys for your time and consideration. Elizabeth did a pretty good job explaining everything we'd like to do. If you guys have any questions for me, I would love to answer anything you guys have.
All right, thank you. Commissioners?
Will you talk more about the
The RV?
Yes, thank you.
So we bought a 1967 Dodge Trafco from California and brought it over here, and we retrofitted it ourselves. We made it into a full-service bar, and it has full electrical and plumbing inside of it, and we attach it right to the building. And then we do every night empty it all out. And part of the reason we want to fence in the area is just to prevent people from potentially trying to break into it, because people have tried to hit the lock a few times here and there just because it's exposed. But we have not, currently for this season, we didn't use it. So it's been empty the whole entire year.
Got it. So Elizabeth, could you go to the site plan slide? So is it going to be parked, or is it currently, I guess, where on this site plan is it
So the photo you just saw it's facing north and south, and that's how we'll face it. So the proposed area that's yellow, it's like the north and south side of it. So the front will be in the north. So this is exactly like this.
Okay. I'm sorry, I thought you said it was attached to the building.
I know, just when you plug in electrical and plumbing, it's attached.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I understand. Thank you.
No problem.
Could you tell us the status of the licensing agreement for parking with the city?
I've been in contact with Mobile GR. They just sent, it's pretty much just where, when we purchased the previous restaurant, it looks like just when we did through the title company, and it didn't get fully transferred over. And we only found out about that when we started this process. So it's just pretty much finalizing that with them.
Josh, you want to speak to that maybe too?
So Josh Nermer with Mobile GR Department. So it was reviewed by the Mobile GR Commission at their most recent meeting, and it is tentatively on the City Commission agenda for approval at the October 24th meeting. So as soon as that agenda comes. So we've been very happy to work with the property owner on clearing that up, and we're taking over all licensing agreements from the Planning Department into our department because they deal with our facilities. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that, Josh. Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today about this case at 724 Wealthy Street Southeast, you can come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us.
Hi, my name is Janelle Rye. I'm a structural engineer in the downtown Grand Rapids area. I'm in full support of this. I think it's very encouraging to see a lot of parking converted into more of a mixed-use pedestrian-friendly area. A lot of our discussions in previous proposals have been around car dependency and car parking, and it's obvious that there's a lot of good public transportation and bike infrastructure around this area. So I would encourage all of you to approve this and just consider the walkability and the pedestrian impact this proposal would have on this neighborhood. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? All right, then discussion.
I think this is a no-brainer, frankly. I think it's completely appropriate. It's 2 spaces out of 4 that I can't imagine were utilized heavily by patrons of the restaurant. There's a public parking lot directly adjacent to it, as well as across the street, and transit on the block. And I mean, yeah, I think generally people know if you're visiting this district, you are parking on the street or in a lot. I don't think people really expect off-site parking at a specific restaurant in this area. So I'm completely supportive.
Yeah, it seems to make sense to me. I don't have a problem with it.
Same, I think it's a great addition, something unique to the community. I'm happy to make a motion if there's no other discussion.
All right, go ahead.
I'm assuming we're using the single. Okay. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves a special land use request of Živio LLC, Dennis Duratovic. Oh, yeah, that's right. For approval of the addition of an outdoor bar and a parking waiver in association with an existing full-service restaurant at 724 Wealthy Street Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose of and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will support the vitality of the local economy by encouraging investment, diversifying the economic base, and expanding employment opportunities, and provide a mix of uses in a commercial area. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.08.e because the outdoor seating is proposed to be situated to not interfere with efficient pedestrian circulation. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood adjacent properties and the natural environment because the proposed changes will not materially affect the operation of the outdoor seating area, which has been operating without incident. Potentially adverse effects arising from the proposed use will be minimized because the alcohol service and seating areas will be appropriately landscaped and buffered from nearby low-density residential use. And adequate parking and alternative forms of transportation are available within the district to support the demand. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, smoke, odors, glare, or visual clutter, because the outdoor hours of operation will be limited and consistent with other outdoor uses in the vicinity, and no outdoor food preparation is proposed. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street, wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment, because no changes are proposed to the existing building along Cherry Street, which is already located at the sidewalk, and the proposed changes to the outdoor seating area will contribute to the vitality of the district. Adequate public or private infrastructure and services does already exist or would be provided at no additional cost and will safeguard the health, safety, and general welfare of the public because the site is currently improved with public infrastructure and reliance on additional public services is not anticipated. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city because the use is not anticipated to result in nuisances that require excessive code enforcement actions given the proposed scale, hours, and location. Given the character, location, development trends, and other aspects of the neighborhood, it is demonstrated that the area is underserved by the proposed use and that the proposed location for alcohol sales will demonstrably be an asset to the neighborhood because, as proposed, the use will be unique as compared to existing uses in the neighborhood. The use or change in use as constructed and operated by the applicant is compatible with the neighborhood because the scale and hours of operation will inherently limit the intensity impact of the use. The use, as proposed to be operated by the applicant, will minimize or eliminate negative secondary effects on the neighborhood because the use is relatively small in scale. Be it further resolved that the following conditions shall apply to the approval. Standard conditions set A approvals on your screen.
Support. Under 3D, can we change Cherry Street to Wealthy Street? I think it was just a typo.
Yeah, I stumbled through that one too. Yeah. 3D, that's the first bullet. From Cherry Street to Wealthy Street.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. I'm going to take a couple-minute break here before our next case.
Cherry Street.
So the next case is the request from Chateau Grand Rapids for a wine bar and cafe to be located at 949 Cherry Street, also known as 955 Cherry Street. This property it's a through property between Lake Drive and Cherry Street, just west of Diamond Avenue. It's in the East Hills Business District, and it is also in the Fairmount Square Historic District. You can see the overhead view of the property here. It is in a traditional business area zone district. Master plan also identifies it as the traditional business area. Just to the north is Congress Elementary School across Lake Drive there, and there is residential surrounding the business district on all other sides. Here is an image of the property. The property includes the large three-story building as well as the two single-story structures attached, flanked on either side. The subject property is in the single-story structure to the east side of the property. It was formerly a retail store. Here's another image. There aren't really any substantive changes proposed to the exterior of the building. Any of the changes that have been proposed have been reviewed and approved by the Historic Preservation Society already, including signage for the building. So that the first view is a view from Cherry Street. This is a view from Lake Drive. You can see the back of the building where this black car is parked is the subject property where the wine bar is proposed. If we jump ahead and speak about parking, part of the request is for outdoor seating and parking waiver. The site has one parking space, as you can see at the rear of the building at Lake Drive. The applicant is proposing to remove that parking space and utilize that about 400 square foot area for outdoor seating. They would seat up to 12 people in this outdoor area at Lake Drive. So the special land use request is for the alcohol use and for the outdoor seating and the waiver of parking. The use proposed is for, as I said, a wine bar and cafe. It is unique in that in the morning hours it will specialize in craft coffee and pastries, have small menu items, and then later in the day, focus will be more on serving specialized wines. There is no live entertainment proposed. Here is an image of the floor plan. As you can see, it will undergo extensive renovation to convert it from retail to bar. The left side is the Cherry side, and as you go through to the back room, you can see there's a lounge area leading out to the Lake Drive entrance. It is the intent of the applicant to utilize both exterior doors from Lake and Cherry Street to have two active entrances into the bar. There will be off-premise alcohol sale of wine proposed with this request as well. Although that is not, it is offered to customers, it is not the focus of the operation. Any wine available for purchase will be displayed behind the bar. Hours of operation requested are 7 a.m. to midnight daily. There were no hours of operation proposed in the application, but generally in the area, other outdoor seating hours in the vicinity go until 11 p.m. daily. So the Planning Commission may consider, what to determine is appropriate for the outdoor seating area. There are several other establishments in the vicinity that sell alcohol. This is unique in that they will be also focused on small menu items and coffee as well. For going back to parking for the zone district and for the use, 18 parking spaces would be required. And the applicant is asking for a waiver of all 18 of the parking spaces. There is public transportation and on-street parking in the close proximity. The applicant has presented to the Uptown Improvement Authority Board, the East Hills Business Association, and can provide more details about that. And we have received a letter of support from the East Hills Business Association for the proposed business. No other correspondence has been received at this time. In sum, we just ask the Planning Commission to consider the request for alcohol sales, outdoor seating, and the waiver of parking for this wine bar. Does the Planning Commission have any questions for me?
Any questions for Laura? Okay, thank you. And we'll invite the applicant up to add any additional insights you'd like to share.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Chris Swart. I'm a partner for Chateau Grand Rapids. And I just want to thank Laura and the entire planning department for all their hard work on this case. And I think she really captured everything I'd love to say. So I'm just here at your disposal for questions.
Could you talk about how the outdoor seating area will be laid out or function? I don't know that I saw renderings of it, and I'm a little confused about the double entrance as it works with that seating.
Sure, no problem. So what we envision out back on the patio to be is some combination of communal picnic tables, as well as a couple of other bistro-style seating back there, as well as some landscaping, some lighting, some safety precautions, including security cameras. But really just kind of light touches there. We probably had some concrete to resurface there as well for safety purposes, and some other decorative touches, but really meant to be a very dynamic outdoor patio for guests to enjoy, and also for it to be an entry point to the building off of Lake Drive. We know that we have great frontage on Cherry Street, but one of the things we wanted to accomplish with this project was to be one of the first, if not the first, to do something to activate Lake Drive.
Is there going to be any kind of like screening of the area or separating it from the sidewalk?
At most, it would be soft landscaping to kind of frame it in. This is still being developed with our architectural team, so we have the interior fully fleshed out. The exterior, we still need to get plans together for that.
Okay. And then how would that work with the trash?
Yes, so we have permission from the landlord who owns this entire building. We have permission for our trash and recycling bins to be positioned right next to these here. Okay. So they won't be right next to guests, I guess.
Thanks.
For the record, Carol, the pointing on the screen was towards the current carts that are located in the property adjacent to the west.
That's correct.
Carol is the recording secretary who's not here today. So can you talk a bit about the alcohol for off-site consumption? What are the container sizes and what's the plan there?
The container sizes would be 750 milliliter wine bottles. That's it. We're not meaning to be a wine store or a liquor store of any sort. We just would like to have the flexibility to have those sales and to not have to come back and burden you with more topics for discussion. So guests can pay literally the same price they would pay if they were enjoying it on premise to take off premise if there's a bottle that we can obtain for them that they can't get at Meyer, which is probably very likely. So we just want to be able to enable that for our guests.
Is this use subject to SEPTED because of the off-premises? Have they reviewed?
Of course.
I think, given the hours of operation and the fact that the sale of alcohol for off-site consumption was accessory to the primary use, we did not find, I don't think people are going to be coming in to purchase alcohol. It's probably people that are already enjoying wine there that would be buying it. So we did not pass that by SEPTED, but we'll be happy to do so.
And with the outdoor seating, I think the neighbors are all restricted to 11 p.m. for outdoor seating. Are you comfortable with that as well?
We are comfortable with that.
Thank you. And then relative to the parking, you got the support from the business association. Was that with full understanding that you're asking for 18 parking spaces to be waived?
I'm not sure if we included the full packet for the special land use application to them. We did review and present our plans to them, and which included the fact that we would be converting the one parking space into outdoor seating, and that there's no other parking affiliated with the business. So I suppose it was implied, but not a direct question to them.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thanks. And we'll open up the public hearing for anyone who would like to comment on this case. Welcome to come up to the microphone. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and turn to commissioners for deliberation.
So yeah, I think this is a completely appropriate use in this district. I think it'll add to the vibrancy of this district and kind of extend the hours of the district itself. It's not the only alcohol use in this area, and so I'm not concerned about, we have on here the impact including on the neighborhood, including the school, and I don't think there have been any issues related to the school and the alcohol uses in this area. The main entrance, I would say, is oriented away from the school property. So, yeah, again, not worried about that. And also, I'm fine with the parking waiver as well. There's plenty of on-street and district parking and bike parking and transit. And, yeah, I think we want to encourage people to be walking through the district anyway. So, yep, I'm supportive.
One of our considerations is, on the other end, an overabundance of similar alcohol-related establishments. How do you feel about that?
I think this one is unique compared to the other ones in the area, especially since they're going to be focusing on wine and coffee, whereas the others are different. Yeah.
I appreciate this is a bit of a kind of a lull in storefronts on this side, so I would appreciate, to have some people sitting on this side of those buildings rather than just not on Sherry but on Lake as well. So I do appreciate the thought process on that.
Kristen, are we able to act without any plans on the outdoor seating? Is testimony sufficient?
I think yes, you can defer the actual site layout plan to the city staff, and we would review it as part of our permit process unless there's specific concerns. But what I heard was that some additional screening would likely be installed, some landscape screening, which I think the LCC would probably also require to kind of contain the alcohol consumption area. It's not a significantly sized patio, so if we have your understanding of what your hours are, the fact that there won't be any live entertainment, I think city staff can take care of the details. If you're comfortable with that, of course.
Okay, all right, I'll do this one. Unless somebody else, not Christine, wants to do one. All right. Lawrence, what about you? Okay, I'll do it. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use and site plan review request of Chateau Grand Rapids LLC, Chris Swart, for a wine bar with outdoor seating and the sale of wine for off-site consumption at 949 AKA 955 Cherry Street Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will support the vitality of the local economy by encouraging investment, diversifying the economic base, and expanding employment opportunities, and provide a mix of uses in a commercial area. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of Section 5.12.8.e because the design of the existing building is consistent with the standards for the zone district. The outdoor seating is proposed to be situated to not interfere with the efficient pedestrian circulation. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment, because in addition to operating as a wine bar, the proposed use will also be a cafe that offers food and craft coffee, which is unique to other businesses in that area, and the use has the support of the neighboring businesses and the business association. Potentially adverse effects arising from the proposed use will be minimized because the entrance doors on both Lake Drive and Cherry Street will be utilized, activating both street frontages of the building. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, smoke, odors, glare, or visual clutter, because the business will typically be open no later than midnight, and outdoor hours of operation will be limited and consistent with other outdoor uses in the vicinity. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment, because no changes are proposed to the existing building along Cherry Street, which is already located at the sidewalk, and the proposed outdoor seating area will activate the property at Lake Drive and support the pedestrian environment. Adequate public or private infrastructure and services already exist or would be provided at no additional cost and will safeguard the health, safety, and general welfare of the public because the site is currently improved with public infrastructure and reliance on additional public services is not anticipated. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city because the use is not anticipated to result in nuisances that require excessive code enforcement actions given the proposed scale, hours, and location. Given the character, location, development trends, and other aspects of the neighborhood, it is demonstrated that the proposed location for alcohol sales will demonstrably be an asset to the neighborhood because as proposed, the use will be unique as compared to existing uses of the neighborhood, and the combination of proposed uses, which include a craft coffee bar and cafe in addition to the wine bar, will be an amenity to the neighborhood unique from other businesses in the vicinity. The use or change in use as constructed and operated by the applicant is compatible with the neighborhood because the scale of the operation will inherently limit the intensity and impact of the use, and the proposed hours of operation are consistent with other establishments in the vicinity. Adjacent or nearby parks, playgrounds, religious institutions, or schools will not be adversely affected because the sale of packaged alcohol is not the primary focus of the business, and it is anticipated to be purchased by patrons visiting the tasting room and not generally by walk-in visitors. The use as proposed would be operated by the as proposed to be operated by the applicant will minimize or eliminate negative secondary effects on the neighborhood because the use will be relatively small in scale and the operation is expected to be in compliance with the SEPTED ordinance. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. One, standard conditions that A, approvals as shown on your screen, and two, that the hours of operation are limited to midnight daily indoors and no later than 11 p.m. outdoors. 3, that packaged alcohol sales is accessory to the primary wine bar use and shall be consistent with the general operating hours of the business. 4, that the area of packaged alcohol display shall be consistent with the submitted floor plan and testimony, specifically display shelves located behind the bar. 5, that the use shall comply with the requirements of the Crime Prevention through Environmental Design or SEPTED ordinance.
Support.
Thank you. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Passes. Thank you.
Spread out.
Yeah. All right, we have a site plan review for 100, 221, and 251 Michigan Street Northeast.
Hi, Commissioners. Thanks, Chairman. For our last case today, we're going to be talking about a rebranding package that Corewell Health, formerly known as Spectrum Health, is bringing forward today for some sign upgrades. The properties that we'll be looking at today are 100 Michigan, 221 Michigan, and 251 Michigan. As I stated, as part of an organizational rebranding, all the signage that's associated with the Medical Mile campus, which is shown both in the light green and the black squares here, all of that is being reinstalled to align with their current branding. Because some of these signs are larger and some are new, it requires a major amendment, which is what brings them to you today. As you can see, this is just a diagram to show you the number of signs that are installed on buildings, as well as the number of wayfinding signs. And so as you can imagine, working with this group to comb through all of these signs to find the ones that needed to come before you today has been a months-long journey. And so the ones that we will be considering today are just a few of them. Namely, going from something that was about 165 square feet to now something that's a little bit larger, closer to 185 square feet, to facilitate the new brand as well as a location identifier and a building identifier, all of which would be in conformance with the zone district requirements. However, this is much larger than what was previously installed at this location. In addition to that, we have upper level signage here on 221 Michigan. That'll be a new part of the planned sign program. And to facilitate signage on the new ambulatory building, we have some upper wall signage here, as well as here facing the north elevation. You'll also notice in your packet that there was some language about a ground sign, and this is located outside of public property, and so as part of a discussion with engineering and traffic safety, as well as planning staff, will work to look at the requirements and the appropriateness of that sign. So for today's meeting.
I think you meant it because it's outside of private property.
Yes.
It is on public property.
Yep, it's in public right of way. Because of that, it's not going to be up for your consideration today.
There's a wayfinding plan that's been approved for Michigan Street, so that particular sign will be reviewed in accordance with that plan that is already in place. Sorry, Sarah.
All other signage related to this, as I stated, has been reviewed and meets the current conditions of the planned sign program. So your consideration today is to determine if it's going to result in a more attractive and aesthetic setting, if it improves the wayfinding for the new building, as well as, to install the rebrand that they're going through currently, and then whether or not the planned sign program substantially furthers from the purpose and intent of Article 15. And that's all I have for you.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Any questions for staff at this time? All right, thanks. I'll invite the applicant up if there are other details you would like to share with us.
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Caranzo, and I'm the Senior Director of Real Estate for Corewell Health. This is really an important thing for our healthcare system. We have countless number of patients who access our medical center on the Medical Mile, and we certainly want them to be able to get to where they need to go quickly. So having a level 1 trauma center, as well as our children's hospital, and allowing those patients to be able to find Corewell Health, which is our new brand for Michigan, healthcare for Michigan by Michigan. We really wanted to make sure that it fit well within what your requirements are, and that we were able to allow for our patients to find the services they need to as quickly as possible and park as close to their services as they can. So I'm here just to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Alan, can I assume that, or maybe this is Sarah, but two of the signs are on the new building, correct? The new ambulatory building?
Yes, that is correct. We're constructing a very large new ambulatory building that will include our outpatient neurosurgery, our organ transplant program, and our residency clinics. And so two of those signs will end up going on a new building that we intend to open in 2024.
And that building being significantly larger than what was previously in its place?
That is correct. Yeah, initially it was a 2-story building. In fact, our HR team used to be there, and we did not have any patient care there. So now that we have a very significant amount of outpatient care there, we want to make sure that our patients know that's not part of the hospital, but a very important aspect of our campus. Thank you.
All right, commissioners, any other questions about the specifics of this application? Pretty straightforward. It's a rather unique use in the city, and I think looking at past cases like this, it's we tend to understand the need for people to find their way around easily, passing by on foot or by car. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't see a
agree.
problem with it.
The new sign proposed is not significantly larger than what was there before on the one that it's replacing, and obviously the new building would need new signs, so yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, agreed. It seems very appropriate to me.
Any other discussion? No? All right. Then if someone's willing to make a motion.
I can do this one. Now therefore it be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the request of Corewell Health, John Fragmoni. Is that close? I really nailed the last one. For an amendment to the existing plan sign program within the Greater Corewell Health Medical Mile campus for the following reasons. The applicant has demonstrated that the proposed plan sign program amendments would result in a more attractive aesthetic setting, improved safety, provide more convenient identification for planned users or similar purposes, because the proposed amendments will allow for signage already generally permitted within the city and allow for adequate and effective signs for identification and appropriate commercial speech. The applicant has demonstrated that the location and/or physical characteristics of the applicant's property or the needs for identification are unique when compared to other similarly situated parcels in the same zone district and in the same vicinity, because new signage is necessary and appropriate for new construction associated with the medical mile expansion, as well as to facilitate the rebranding of the hospital group. The applicant has demonstrated that the proposed plan substantially furthers the purposes and intent of Section 5.15.01, because the proposed amendments would take into consideration building scale and massing and pedestrian presence, so that the signs contribute to the streetscape and aid in creating a sense of place. The applicant has demonstrated that approval of the plan sign program amendments would not create any adverse impacts on one or more properties in the vicinity, because the proposed amendments would reinforce and support the character of the surrounding commercial district by taking into account building scale and massing and nearby travel speeds. balance the need and right to communicate with needs to promote orderly communication, promote community aesthetics, and provide a proliferation of signs and sign structures that can be confusing and distracting. And will ensure that signs are located, designed, constructed, installed, and maintained in a way that protects life, health, property, and the public welfare. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard conditions set A, approvals on your screen, striking 3, 5, and 7.
I'll support. And then I think under 4, you meant to say prevent instead of provide, which changes it pretty significantly.
Which bullet?
Second bullet.
Balance the need and right to communicate with needs to promote orderly communication, promote community aesthetics, and prevent.
Yes.
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 It's a very different word.
Very different. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. Correction noted.
I'll assume Carol got that. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. I'll open up the public comment portion of the meeting now. If you're here today and have thoughts you'd like to share with us, please come forward, state your name, and share your thoughts with us.
Hi, my name is Janelle Rye again. I have a public comment for the 20-year master plan. I know it's already been a very long meeting, but I just wanted to say these comments in person. So over the past 10 years, I have lived, traveled, and worked in Germany, sometimes as a tourist, another time as a U.S. diplomat. One thing I appreciated over in Germany, which was absent from my hometown of Grand Rapids, was the high level of equity and mobility. Everywhere I traveled around Germany, over 30 cities, I used a combination of public transportation, walking, and bicycling. I took local and interurban trains with people from all walks of life and abilities, from kids going to school, elderly neighbors visiting friends, blind citizens buying groceries, company executives going to meetings. I often wonder if Grand Rapids were to invest in protected bicycle lanes, as well as higher modes of public transportation, such as light rail trains, would it become a more equitable city to live in, and perhaps draw a wider talent pool, after housing transportation is often the next highest expense in a household. Since the urban planning of Grand Rapids and many surrounding counties is quite car-dependent, car ownership can be a debilitating expense for poorer households. We don't want residents to feel like they are living behind a paywall. Think for a second about all the families in West Michigan who cannot afford to buy a car. How many kids are missing out on opportunities for internships and their first jobs because they cannot travel to them? I bring this up to the City Planning Commission because transit and land use go hand in hand. The former is not successful without good changes in the latter. You cannot surround bus or train stops with sprawling development based on conventional zoning, which separates infrastructure by use and not by form. Let's say the city secures funding and support for light rail trains from the $44 billion allocated to rail projects in the 2021 infrastructure bill. Let's also say our land use policies remain the same after implementing that. Think about the various users of light rail and try to put yourself in their shoes. You could be traveling by foot, potentially with a cane or walker, bicycle, knee scooter, or wheelchair. If you were an elderly person in a wheelchair, how would you get to your destination if you had to roll past seas and seas of parking lots across a 7-lane road after exiting a train station? This is not the way roads are built, nor cities are zoned in the Netherlands, where my great-grandparents are from, which is a very equitable city for elderly citizens. I'd like to point out the fact that behavior is not a fundamental constant of the universe. It comes from the things we build. It is telling what a city prioritizes by what infrastructure exists. So I would encourage you, as both the Rapid and the City of Grand Rapids are in the midst of their 20-year master plans, to work together and take steps forward to make Grand Rapids a more safe, equitable, and healthy community for everyone.
All right, thank you. Anyone else today?
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Fritzma, and I live at 2036 Joan Avenue Northeast, Grand Rapids, in the 2nd Ward. I heartily agree with the previous citizens' comments regarding the need for improvements in public transportation. I also support the concepts underlying the proposed zoning ordinance changes to increase housing and density. However, I have two serious concerns with changes that are under consideration. First, I have concerns with allowing the potential for more than 6 total units for infill development. I admit I may have an incomplete understanding of that proposal, but secondly, more importantly, my primary concern is regarding the potential unintended effects of allowing infill development by right. How do we ensure that this change doesn't get abused by developers who are arguably those who are most likely to have the resources to do this kind of development? This question was raised at the last Planning Commission meeting that I watched online, but Ryan didn't address this particular concern. My primary concern is with eliminating the requirement, I guess, for being owner-occupied. I could see perhaps expanding this to include immediate family occupied, but expanding it to just anyone, including developers, potentially people with outside funding from outside of the community who may not have an investment and in supporting the local community, has its pitfalls. I see this potentially clashing with our named values of equity and culture. I see it firsthand as someone who has been concerned with the potential for development along the south border of Huff Park. I live in that neighborhood, and we see up front what's happening with the properties that have been purchased, and now the buildings are being rented, presumably until the developer can buy up enough properties to fully implement their plan of putting in 30-plus luxury condos in that area. So another comment, just removing the barrier of a $2,000 fee doesn't really help individuals who want to be able to do private infill development. Maybe figuring out a way to do some interest-free building loans or something like that might encourage this to be used in the way that I think it's intended, so that people who have the potential for affording it could possibly do that. But considering most people can barely afford mortgage, let alone groceries, I see that as potentially very prohibitive, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I will close the public comment. Any other business, commissioners or staff? All right, then we're adjourned. Thank you.